some comments by now former Vikings offensive lineman Nick Easton. And we want to know, do you think these are shots fired or just a guy admiring the New Orleans Saints organization? Get in at 651-646-8255 or tweet us at Score North. I turn it over to Mr. Judd Zulgad.
Yes, sir. Yesterday, Sirius XM NFL Radio. Nick Easton makes a guest appearance after agreeing to a 4-year, $24 million contract. Right now, it looks like he's going to replace Max Unger and play center for the Saints. Let me give you the comments, and then we can react to that. Nick Easton, quote, "On my visit down there, I was just blown away with how knowledgeable and enthusiastic those coaches were. And obviously, you have a well-established offense and an unreal quarterback room that they have down there. It's just going to be a huge benefit to everybody else on the team, and it's probably one of the most attractive parts about being a Saint." He's not done yet. Not to mention one of the most well-respected offensive lines in football. It's pretty obvious why I chose to go down there, and I'm fired up to be a part of it. Now, the interesting thing to keep in mind is the Pioneer Press reported late last week, or at some point last week, that we know for a fact that the Vikings did make an offer to try and keep him. I don't know, because of their salary cap situation, what the offer was exactly, but the Vikings were probably somewhat aggressive in trying to bring Easton back after a year out because of neck surgery and play him at guard. So, Ramie, we'll start with you. The quotes I just read, are they simply excited to be with the Saints now and praising his new team, or is that also looking back at his old team and saying, this is a lot better down here?
I can't tell you what the intent was in the comments. I don't know if Nick Easton got up on the stage and said, I'm going to say X, Y, and Z to make the Vikings look bad or to fire shots at the Vikings. But whether or not that was his intent, that's certainly what came through, is it not? Because what is he, when he talks about how great that quarterback's room is and how great of offensive minds they have on the coaching staff, what is he comparing that to?
He's comparing it to his previous experience here.
What exactly is he comparing that to? And he's never played for another NFL team other than the Minnesota Vikings.
No, he played for San Francisco.
Oh, that's right.
But that was a while back. Right. So, yes.
And it was a short stint, right?
Yeah, these comments definitely come back to the Vikings. Like, these comments are to be, I love this and I love that. I would say this. Nothing he said is necessarily wrong. It's not like you'd say, well, their quarterback room, they just have Drew Brees, so who cares? But it is interesting to know that the Vikings tried to bring him back, that he probably weighed both offers, that he had the opportunity to certainly win a starting job here as well, was familiar with the franchise, and is now basically telling us, at least walking us through the process of how he ended up picking the Saints.
Because
it's interesting.
It seems like all around, in all aspects, he sees them as a better organization. And let's be real, they offered him more money. He wouldn't be in New Orleans right now had they not offered him more money. What was the deal? 4 years, $24 million?
Yeah.
The Vikings didn't have $6 million a year to give to Nick Easton, as we've discussed.
No, $6 to give Nick
Easton. They have like between $6 and $7 million total in cap space, and they haven't even held the NFL draft yet. That's somewhere in the $4 to $6 million range when you're done paying all your free agents or all your draft picks. So they essentially have no money to spend in free agency right now. That's why Nick Easton is a New Orleans Saint. Let's not kid ourselves. But can any of us disagree with the things that he said? Do you think there's any way possible that any of the quarterbacks during Nick Easton's time in Minnesota had a better quarterback room than what Drew Brees has with Sean Payton in New Orleans? Do any of us think that during Nick Easton's time in Minnesota, he had the type of offensive coaches that they have in New Orleans? Do any of us think that during Nick Easton's time in Minnesota that he played for a better offensive line than what he's joining with the Saints? Everything he said was true, but that doesn't mean that these aren't shots fired at the Saints. They're accurate shots fired, but shots fired nonetheless.
Well, I wonder too, a couple things I wonder. One, I want to know do we know how much he got guaranteed of that $24 million?
I have not seen that yet. No, I've just seen
I'll be curious
4 and 24 that Schefter reported on Sunday, I think.
I'll be curious to see what that number was. But also, the thing too with Nick Easton is he didn't play at all last year. So I wonder if he's making sort of this comparison in his mind between the Saints quarterback room with Brees and Peyton and the Vikings quarterback room with, is he comparing it to DeFilippo and Cousins? Is he comparing it to Shermer and
it's just
Keenum.
And it's Drew Brees. So you're always going to say, wow, that's fantastic. It's Drew Brees and Peyton.
But that, like, it's interesting to me because, I mean, they had a good offensive year in 2017, and he was a part of that. Now, he was basically not a part of 2018 because he was out for the entire year, and that was a bad offensive year for the Vikings. I don't know how much he was around the building still, even though he wasn't playing, and if he was still in meetings or something like that. I would just be very curious as to, like, what he would think in terms of the differences between, like, a Pat Shurmur-led offense versus a John DeFilippo-led offense in comparison to the Saints.
Well, and I think he signed with this team, and so he's definitely praising this team, and it makes perfect sense. What comments like this do is the comments are absolutely correct. But what they also do is they inflame the insecurities that already exist here, which is, you don't have that QB. You don't have that line.
Yep.
As good as Gary Kubiak might be, he's not Sean Payton, right? And so I think what these comments do in frustrating or inflaming Vikings fans is they sort of take the stick of insecurity and poke them and say, yeah, you're right about your team. Your team might be good defensively, but guess what? You got problems. And the Saints offensively are really, really good. And so I saw on Twitter last night that there were Vikings fans upset about this or talking about this. And I believe what this does is this just comes back to basically prod them a little bit more and say, everything that you believe to probably be true, but probably don't want to focus on, Nick Easton is confirming and is absolutely correct.